Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to my shop. This is the first video in a three-part series on restoring hand planes. So I have 5 different hand planes that I'm restoring, all the way from this block plane to the mighty number 7, everything in between, all the way down to this little number 3. And I'm going to be doing different things for different hand planes and showing 3 different methods of restoring a hand plane. This is episode number 1 in restoring a hand plane, and I have these 2. They're very cheap. It's a block plane and a number 5. These are probably the 2 most common planes you're going to find in a garage sale. They're both from the 50s. They're fairly cheap. This is a Stanley Handyman from the 50s, and then this is a Dunlop from the 50s. You know, they're decent. They work. They're not the best. But they can be restored and they can do some great things. So I want to kind of go through what you do if you have a hand plane that's okay. You don't want to spend a lot of time on it. You just want to make it work.
As with any restore project, the first step is taking things apart. And with most hand planes, it's fairly straightforward. You just take off screws and unscrew whatever comes loose. And you just got to keep an eye on how things come apart. Normally I tell people to be careful with the brass pieces, but these are fairly cheap planes, and so there aren't any brass pieces. They're all steel, which makes it very easy for taking them out. You don't have to worry about stripping them out. As I go, I like to actually use a sanding block and clean up any of the surface rust on some of the larger steel pieces. This handle on the block plane is a great example of that. Also use some of the knobs. I wanted to refinish the handles and totes, but realized, for this one they're not really needed, so I'm going to leave those as is in this restoration. Don't do things that you don't have to do. Next step is actually getting all of the dirt and grime and old sawdust out. I go most of it with this brush, and I might even come in with a toothbrush and get those things out of the little corners. On this one, the frog had paint over the surface where the iron melts with it, and that is not acceptable in my book, so I wanted to clean all that off. So I just used a rasp and file to get rid of all of the paint off of the surface of the frog so that the iron would mate nicely with it. Now, before flattening the sole on this, I decided to put it all back together because you do want it to be in tension when you flatten it. So I'm putting the frog back on and tightening everything up as I go. This will also give you a preliminary idea of how it will look and fit and make sure everything's right. For flattening the sole, I use a Sharpie to label out on the bottom what I need to remove, being very careful of around the mouth, the heel, and toe of the plane. And then I'll go at it quite a bit with this flattened out piece of a belt sander. It was, I believe, 6 by 48 inches, and I'll just clamp it to one end and start sanding. And that allows me to see what I still need to do and what I don't need to do. This one, the mouth was looking fairly good, but needed a little more work. The block plane is a lot easier. I still use the Sharpie to mark it out, but it goes pretty quickly. I'm not looking for dead flat. I'm just looking for flat on the mouth, the heel, the toe, and the majority of it. This one's going to have a bit of a divot behind the iron, but that's not a problem for the block plane. I start off with a 30 grit and then go to an 80 grit and then to 100 and then to 180 and then to a 250, I think is what I had. And then this is a 400 grit on a sponge pad. I find that finishing off with this is a great way to kind of polish it out. Don't have to worry about it unflattening the sole. And then it's on to sharpening. So I start by flattening the back of the iron with a coarse stone. I spend most of my time on this coarse stone. And then once it is nice and I have the scratches all the way across the nose, I will go coarse, medium, and fine, and then finish it up with the strop, getting a nice buttery surface on the strop finish. And I'm really going until I can see that mirror surface all the way across the very tip. Then once the back is done, I can put it in a jig, and this one I need to do quite a bit to establish that bevel. And so I put it in the jig and go at it with 60 grit on some glass. Gets the bevel exactly where it needs to be, and then I can go through the coarse, medium, and fine grit and get that bevel really nice and sharp and running well. And then of course ending it up on the strop to give yourself that mirror finish. And yes, it cuts hair. Once everything has been sharpened, we can actually then go into tuning up the planes and making sure everything fits. This particular one didn't have a lateral adjuster, so you have to use a small hammer to adjust it side to side if needed. and you can get them going and making some really nice curls. It's kind of fun to take cheap, junky planes and make them work just as good, if not actually better than new when you would have gotten them in the store. And you can get curls off of these, and they will treat you very, very well.
There you have it. They're not terribly pretty, but they work, and they work very well. And this will be a fantastic block plane when you want to chamfer edges and do small things. It has a nice low angle, so you can do your ingrain with it. A good jack for doing most anything you want to. If you want to, you could set it up to do some fine shavings, or you can hog off things. You could put in a cambered iron and turn it into a 4-plane. It is a great hand plane to just have in a general shop. And so without much effort, you can turn one of these cheap Junko hand planes into something that's very useful and functional in your shop. So I hope you like this. It was a very fun video to put together. I will be putting out 2 other videos. They may already be out on other ways of restoring a hand plane and doing better work on better hand planes. If you did like this video, please hit like and think about subscribing. I do want to say a huge thank you to the patrons on Patreon. You guys are an incredible encouragement to me, and thank you for that. If you like this video, you might find out you like one of these others. And until next time, have a wonderful day.